And we are live. And as this is the Halloween special, we are wearing masks. And I'd like to introduce our very special guest that we have today, Bizzaro.
Hey, how's it going?
There he is, Bizzaro, right in person. Looks slightly different than you might expect, but it's great to have you on.
The camera had 10 pounds.
Yeah, yeah. It seems to
I'm
have
not.
nothing to do with your
Sorry. I don't know how he got out of his closet. Sorry.
It's past. It's as long as you don't feed him before midnight, everything will be fine.
Yeah. Well, it's noon here, so we're fine.
Yeah, you've loads of that.
Gremlins don't know what time zones are. Come on.
Definitely. But we just like to thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
Oh,
And I guess
I'm happy to be here.
we'll start where we usually start with everybody, which is the start at the very beginning. Can you tell us how you first got into magic or how that all came about?
Well, I lost a bet at a very young age. No, I had unfortunately, it's nothing exciting. I was like 5 or 6, and I got a magic kit from a company called Fisher-Price that made made like a magic series for like 2 years in the mid '80s, and it wasn't your typical, hey, here's some cheap, crappy magic tricks like some cups and balls. It was like this whole like trunk kind of thing, and it encouraged stage performing and stand-up performing. So I think that's kind of where that comes from, so I blame them a little bit. And then it just, I liked it, so I just kept at it. And when I was like 13, I was like, let's do this for a living and make money. And that didn't happen for a long time, but yeah, I kept at it anyway for some reason.
Yeah. It's weird. It's like we don't have a choice. It's like a compulsion that we just can't. I think that's something that's come across from everybody. It's just you can't not do it.
It's my mother once told me she was smoking marijuana when she breastfed me. I went, that's why.
You had magical experiences from a very young age. So.
Nice.
And then you've kind of got your own style that I think people know. Even having the name Bizzaro really kind of stands out. How did you develop your how you were going to perform and what type of effects you'd do?
I mean, I've kind of always just been me. Like the magic I do is very much I don't say I have a character on stage, because I'm not portraying something I'm not. I'm just being more myself, just theatrically ramped up. And so it's like I try to create the stuff that I would want to see if I was sitting in the audience. So I'm basically trying to impress myself all the time, I guess. I grew up just having a weird sense. My parents were like hippies, shocker. But my parents, they also were they introduced me to all sorts of like sciences and art and performance, and they liked Halloween. So I grew up around weird stuff. I was never really shielded from anything. So I saw Marcel Marceau when I was 8, which was like, well, I don't understand what's going on. But I saw a lot of Moment Shots, this weird Swiss performing art troupe when I was younger. And so I also grew up, I got to see all the cool weird kid performers in the 80s growing up. So it was. Yeah. And just over the time, you're something in your brain snaps, and you just kind of say, "Screw it, I'll do what I want." And I've always been drawn to just weird stuff, and also I see something and go, "Oh, that's cool," but I don't want to do that. It's like, or I want to do my own version of that. And I've always said, if you want to be more creative, just don't do what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. A lot of people go through. Where Joe, as you're developing, you start off with just you want to do what you think is cool, and then you have to realize, no, actually, I should be doing stuff that is more me, and trying to figure out what that is something that a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, and I mean, thankfully for me, I kind of came to grips with who I was as a person and a performer at a young age, so that helped quite a bit. And some people just really can't be honest with themselves. They look in the mirror and go, "Yeah, my fat ass could be David Copperfield," and it's like, could you? So it's about being honest, and also just kind of take. I say this a lot, and I've said this multiple places, and that is make the magic, make the magic to who you are. Don't make yourself to the magic, because then you end up with something that is uniquely you. I love nacho cheese Doritos, so I have a routine where Doritos attack me. You know, my friend loves ketchup, and I kept telling him, you love ketchup. Why don't you do ketchup magic of some sorts? Not like the whole act, but do something with it and talk about it. That's your thing. And so, you know, it's like find the things that make you unique and give you an identity. Figure out what your identity is, and, you know, then that it comes a lot easier to create when you have a framework of to create within.
Sean Farquhar said something quite similar about like thinking outside the box or taking an old effect and giving it your own slant and kind of challenging yourself then in that way that you could like myself and Dave had done it before, where you could just go to a store, any store, and spend, you know, a certain amount, maybe 10, 20 euro in our case, or $20, and you have to make a trick out of that, and it's a little challenge to yourself and see what you can come up with.
I mean, that was the entire premise of the show, Wizard Wars. That was what I mean, and that's actually a great exercise because and Sean Farquhar had you know, they do a thing called the Bag of Tricks Challenge at PCAM, where they do the same thing. They give you a bag of crap and just say, have fun, make magic, suckers. And it's a great exercise for people who want to try it. And there's people out there who are like, oh, I can't be creative. I'm like, try it. It's definitely not something that you can like, there's no formula for it, and there's definitely not something that you can like take a pill for to do it, but you can work at it. It's something you have to exercise and just kind of realize there are different answers to the same question.
I remember one time I was doing a filming thing with a crew, and like that they were like, oh, we're going to go to a pound shop, a dollar store type thing, and we're going to pick up 2 items, and I want to see, can you do a trick by the end of the day? I was like, yeah, sure, whatever you want. So they came back with a scientific calculator and a Hot Wheels toy car. So I just let them put in whatever sum, and then the total was the barcode that was on the toy.
Done. Yeah.
It's like a gift given to you.
Right. Right? It's like, oh, no, I don't know. Oh. No, this is going to take me hours, guys. I'm going to go get lunch.
They could have just come back and given you like, okay, so here is a coin and a marker. Go figure it out.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. There's an interesting thing talking about trying to put a slant on something. I was Garrett Thomas. Have you guys know Garrett Thomas? Yeah. You should have him on if you can. He's a good guy. He has some creativity notes, and one of the things in there he talks about, and this isn't necessarily his, it's the similar thinking in other branches, but it was take the beginning of an effect and the end of an effect and put them together. You know, so it's like start with cups and balls, end with linking rings, and somehow, I don't know, you know what I mean, but the premise of one trick, the effect of another, and just see what happens. And that's, you know, it's not hard to be considered creative in magic because so many people aren't. If you just take a prop, look at it, and go, what does the thing look like? And then you paint it and turn it 90 degrees, all of a sudden, you're creative.
I think that's similar to what I think I heard Peter Turner before talking about taking a trick and just do the trick backwards. So he was talking, I think he meant the Omni deck, and just instead of turning it into an Omni deck, turn an Omni deck into the cards. Done.
Yeah, why not? Yeah, I mean, we tend to think magicians tend to think inside of like a magic box, like only a magic box, and there's so many other better boxes out there that you should be looking in. You know, it's like learning about what's out there in the world. Go walk through every art store you can. Go through every tool store you can. Just walk through pet stores, even if you don't own a pet. Or, you know, I go through sporting goods stores. I really have no business being in a sports store. And there's cool stuff that you can make magic with that you would not have found otherwise.
Definitely. Because I think it's when you're trying to come up with an effect, a lot of people learn an effect, and it's like the IKEA instructions that you follow: step 1, step 2, step 3.
Right.
And that's why I just don't read the instructions and put the thing together, and then that's why there's so many parts left over at the end.
Right. I mean, it doesn't hold anything. It doesn't look like anything. I pitched this idea this is totally random. Pitched this idea for a TV show they never used. It was like you, because it was some Swedish magicians where you would pour a ton of, like, you would have like 3 different IKEA products, and you just pour everything on the ground, and then say, you have 10 minutes to make something, go. And then at the end, they've made some monstrosity of some sorts. And then next to it, there's a box. You lift it up, and it matches their prediction exactly. It's like the IKEA Frankenstein prediction.
That's such a good idea. That's I'm literally trying to run through methods in my head right now.
Yeah. Well, for TV, you can fudge a few things.
Yeah, definitely. And pause. Okay, we'll be back there in an hour. Let me just.
Right. Yeah.
What was some of the shows that you really enjoyed working on, Bizzaro?
I don't think I've been on any where I went, oh God, that was terrible. I mean, I've enjoyed most of them. Wizard Wars was probably my favorite, just because we got to be so creative with that and create so much weird magic out of nothing. You know, and most of my job in that was not necessarily to make the magic for the people who are my teams, I guess, but was to kind of guide them. It was really consulting in like the truest sense of the word. Was like, oh, we have this method or we have this idea, and you go, okay, well that already exists, or this method would be better for this, da da da. And if they were really stuck, they'd be like, we don't know what to do with these things. I'd be like, all right, well, we'll try this. And so but that was probably the one that there was no reason for that show not to continue, except for just there was a change in management over at the NBC, and they're just like, man, magic. And we're like, it was like the show did well in ratings, and it just didn't get renewed. It's like, it wasn't, I tell people all the time, it wasn't canceled, it just wasn't renewed because bullshit. So, but it was.
No, really good concept. Really cool.
Yeah, and I think that show could have done really well if it hadn't gotten dicked over, so.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable show to watch, especially as a magician, and even for people who they got a bit of a peek behind the curtain into how magicians think, which I think people really. It's fascinating because it's not something that is shown that much. It's more just a performer rather than
most magic on TV up until that point was like voyeurism, almost like prank magic. You know, it was like the camera's on somebody and the viewer wasn't invested because there was no magic being done for them. It's them watching somebody get magic done to them. And we're still doing that, obviously, but it's, you know, you've got a few shows now that aren't as bad about that. You get to see people actually performing an act, but for a long time magic has been too voyeuristic and nobody cares.
Yeah, it's true.
It's definitely difficult to try and get people to care. And when you're putting together like one of your shows, what did you look at for like the structure of that to make sure to have people engaged? Do you have like a set layout, or does it kind of vary from one show to show?
Well, it depends. I mean, I have two different shows technically. I've got my silent act and I've got my talking like stand-up act. And but the real answer to that is it's not the material, it's the performer. You know, it's like I work on trying to have the people like me as a person, because if they like you as a performer, they'll come watch you do anything. They'll come watch you read a book if they like you. So it's like the material obviously helps, but you can have some of the best magic in the world. If your personality or your persona is shite, then nobody cares. They're not going to come back and see you.
We appreciate that you said shit.
I speak your language. I know things. I'm a world traveler.
If you had a choice, and it was like someone said it's up to you to do the silent act or the comedy act, which one would you choose to do?
It's always the silent act, but it also depends how I feel. Like I also have to look at the venue and I go, okay, this venue, this crowd, or this size venue, this won't work. The silent act won't work here. But given a choice, it's like you have 15 minutes. I'm like, well, silent act it is. They're like, what you do in an hour? I'm like, talking act it is.
You decided that coming on the basis that you wanted to travel internationally, and you thought a silent act would be the best way to do that?
No, I've been doing silent since I was a kid. Well, since I was a teenager, actually. I used to work at a lot of bars and nightclubs here back in Texas, where I'm from. And so when people are drinking in a bar and you're talking, they can just ignore your ass really easily. However, if you're silent and everybody's like, if you're talking to somebody and then everybody else is looking past you and you're finally like, what is going on behind me? What, and you kind of have to pay attention to it. And you don't have to, but you tend to. And so I found that any kind of like music venue or anything, bar, nightclub venue, and I've been working bars and nightclubs since I was 16. So that kind of helped steer me that direction. But I also found that when I mixed my silent performing and my talking, it was two different energies, and it was not in a good way. So I made the decision at one point where I'm like, only talking, only silent. And now there are silent bits in my talking act, but they fit that performing style as opposed, but then they don't show up in the silent act because it's just two different energies, if you will.
Yeah, it is weird in a room. I even find it when somebody's on stage and they're just setting something up, like when the crew walks on, and everybody just is looking, being like, "Why is somebody on stage and not actually talking?" And it's almost like there's a tension until someone speaks. And
Yeah, well, we're just so used to it.
Yeah.
We're just so used to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because people expect, like, hey.
Even putting a silent piece into any act, if you just, the hardest thing I think to do on stage in a speaking act is just be silent, or just let the moment last that little bit longer than it needs to be, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that show a lot of kind of command to a performer if you can just sit there and do nothing. Like, for example, like Darren Brown can just sit on a chair and take a few deep breaths and then be silent, and then
that's right. And magicians, but most magicians love the sound of their own voice and really do not know how to shut up. And it's like, then what helped me a lot was working with the stand-up stand-up comics and stuff, and watching them and seeing how they kind of like, they'll say a joke. If it hits, cool. If not, they pretend it did and move on or whatever. But also, they know how to milk a moment, and good comedians, obviously.
Yeah.
And just watching, and Darren Brown's very theatrical, and that's a very theater thing. He does a lot. I wouldn't say his is comedy based. His is theater based. Where theater based is, you take a breath for either dramatic pause or to let the audience catch up to what's going on, because you need those moments of tension and relaxation, so the audience can kind of keep up with you.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those things that it's about when people get obsessed with, like, oh, I'm putting together a show, I need to have this trick. Oh, and I love this trick, and I love that. And it's like, you got to look at the flow. Even a simple thing, as Darren Brown, when before he walks on glass, he takes off his shoes, and he's just sitting there untying his shoes, and there's nothing. But everybody is, because people have to comprehend what's about to happen, and that moment is so important.
Yeah, for sure. And Darren has a lot of smart people behind him too. It's not just Darren Brown. He's got a whole team of people helping him. So that also, it's like, and Darren's a good example of, hire a director, hire the right director, hire the right lighting guy, hire the right this, hire the right that. It's like anything. And there's a lot of guys who just are like, well, I don't want to spend that. I can do all this myself. And it's like, we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it, but I still have people come in and be like, hey, have you thought of this? Try this, and I have, I'd have professional friends who give me notes and stuff. And it's just, and that's, a lot of people are like, what's the difference between an amateur and a professional performer? I'm like, well, there's a number of them. Which one do you want to start with? Like, what category do we want? And one of them is definitely just not hiring people to help you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a very important, and it's also important not just to hire them, but also to listen to what they actually tell you. Because I'm definitely guilty of it. When someone says, "Oh, what about this?" It's like, my show is perfect. Leave it alone.
Well, there's at the end of the day, it's your show, and I have a very specific vision about some of the stuff that I want to do, and I've definitely thought about a lot of stuff. I'm very hard on other performers, but for as hard as I am on other performers, I'm doubly so on myself, if not more. And so a lot of people are like, "Oh, have you thought about this?" I'm like, "Yes, actually, I have." And then they get all indignant. Well, you don't listen, you don't take advice, and I'm like, Just because I've already thought of your idea doesn't mean I don't take advice. So I've learned to just go, thank you. I'll think about that.
There is a line there, because even if it's out of your style, like on stage, I'm a mentalist, and then I've had people say, "Oh, why don't you do a certain trick?" And I'm like, because it's not mentalism. So it's like that's pretty much. And then it's like, oh well, if you don't want advice, then I'm like, well, it's not in my character cannot do that to sound like. And then oh god, he's so theatrical.
Who is it? It's John Armstrong, I believe, who has had a whole lecture about like decide what your superpower is. Figure out what your powers are. I like to go the opposite way. I say figure out what your superpower isn't. Like I don't. I'm not a levitator. I'm not a Losander. Like I don't like to do levitation stuff. And so I'm just like, not my superpower. That's not what I do. So you'll rarely see me do it.
I find that with invisible thread. I'm just like, I don't like not being able to see the secret myself, so I won't do it. I want to get So
it's like I love the thought of carrying around something that could just break and screw me over last second. It's so good.
Yeah.
It's like this is the levitation. This is the most levitation you'll see me do here. Is like, I mean, that's the extent of my floating right there.
That is very good floating. I see a lot of people do that, but that was actually I could see you
I have a little bit of work on it.
Yeah, small bit. So when you're developing stuff, you have some stuff released to the Magic community and marketed out. Like Overstuffed, I think, is one of the ones that a lot of kids.
Everybody has done it. Everybody has done it.
Where did the idea of that for that kit come up? Was it just Oreos?
I mean, you go with what you know, and I know food. I was sitting around and I had this idea for an effect where you have a signed coin end up inside the cream of a freely selected Oreo, right? And this was early 2000s, like 2003, 2004, I want to say. Anyway, God, it feels like it's like that was so long ago, but it feels like it wasn't, doesn't it? It's anyway.
That long ago.
Yeah, sure. The 90s were 20 years ago. And I couldn't. The method I had didn't work, and so I'm like, it sucks. What else can I do with an Oreo? That was kind of my first foray into the Oreo trick, the Oreo world, and I was like, it'd be great. Boing. And so the original version was just refilling it back to normal, just like a little bit, and I made I handmade like 100 of those and sold them as double stuffed. Double stuffed was the name of those, and then came Overstuffed, which because I'd pitched the original Oreo trick to Theory 11 when they first started, and I guess they never saw it because when I mentioned that to them, they were like, "Oh yeah, we would have put that out. How do we not see that?" So then I resubmitted the Overstuffed one. They're like, yes, we'll do this one, and that was a fun back and forth. And so, but then for me, like Oreos are just a very natural, easy prop to make magic for. They're round and their containers are great. They're such a recognizable object too. It's like I like to do magic with ordinary items because then when it does something amazing, people are more amazed because they've handled those items and know that they can't do that.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think even decks of cards are becoming like a lot of people don't see decks of cards as anymore.
I mean, usually when they do, they're in a drawer somewhere, and they only see them when they're like poker night or playing whatever weird card game they're into.
Yeah, it's gone from the thing that everybody had as their weekend activity to unless you have really into poker, or you have solitaire on your phone is another one I see quite a bit. That's about it.
Yeah, well, yeah, solitaire. I mean, you used to have a deck of cards to play solitaire, and now you can do it on every device. So, yeah, I don't think. I mean, I don't know if cards are. I mean, people will always know what they are, but I don't know if people just have them in their house as much as they used to.
Yeah, I think I've noticed like through time people have gotten not as good as shuffling as before. It's like
I'm not sure people were ever good at shuffling. I think it's just an us thing.
Maybe that was it. But when you come up with something like with the Oreos and you're saying bring it to the market, how do you know that this is something that is ready to be released, or is something that people go, or do you just swing it?
I mean, you go out and you test it. I mean, if you for a good, you'll know you have something that is good if you've gone out and taken it into the world and tested it and gotten real audience reaction from it, and also just done thought about it a lot. Like most of the he buggered off. All right, yeah. See you later. All right.
I see.
He's like, they're not talking to me. I'm out.
The wonderful internet in Limerick has a sales TV. I'm sure he'll be back in a second.
But yeah, no, it's a lot of products put out nowadays aren't road tested. They don't sit on it for like a year, making sure it's the best it can be and stuff like that. So I come from a different generation. Welcome back. Hey, look at that. Hey, I see you found the orange light. You got rid of it.
The orange is gone.
Yeah, good job. You're sufficiently Irishly pasty again. Good job. Bunch of mutated white guys. All right. Anyway,
I was gonna come back like this, but I was like, nah, that's far too pale.
This is totally random. We watch, my wife and I watch a YouTube channel called the Try Channel. It's Irish people trying stuff, and there's a girl on there who is impressively pale, and then she wears bright red lipstick, and it makes it worse. And I just stare at her, going, "How are you so white? Wow, you're like a mannequin. It's amazing." Anyway,
there's a meme in Ireland about it's a picture of a beach with people sunbathing, and it's like, see the Irish person sunbathing? No, not that one. You see a pale person, and then you see someone who's completely blended in with the sand.
Yeah.
That's the level.
Yep, it's good to be reflective. Anyway, so it's nice. You'll get and not everything I put out was like gangbusters, but it's also I put out stuff myself. I've self-produced, and I put out stuff with other companies. So it really just depends. The stuff with other companies tend to be experiments, or it's something I'm like, I don't want to spend the $10,000 to get a mold made to do this or whatever it is. For injection molding and stuff like that. So. It just depends on a few things, but I've put out like one or two of items on my own that weren't like huge. That they didn't and I didn't intend them to be huge. They were just kind of like, I want to publish this. And I've one of them like when I'm like I bought a bunch of supplies for it. It's basically a karate. Hold on. Do I have it in my bag here? I'll just do it. It's an Oreo trick. I know that's a shocking revelation. I know.
No way, an Oreo trick.
I know, but it's Nice. It's karate coin with an Oreo, because I'm like, you can't do that. You can't. Even in America, we don't know what a $50 is. So I'm like, what else could you do it with? And I was like, I'll do it with an Oreo because it's me. And I bought a whole bunch of these rubber Oreos, and I make these, and and it doesn't cost much, but at the same time, it didn't sell as well as I'd hoped. So when I'm out, it's gone. I'm not selling them anymore. So it's called. But if you like it, it's called Kung Food. So you can go see the trailer for that. The trailer is better than the trick, I think, because I spent a lot of time. Well, no, I mean, this one was intentionally, like, I got a whole bunch of different, because I wanted to show the versatility of a gimmick like that, because that kind of gimmick is versatile, and that's, like, anytime I do like my glue bottle, anytime I do a utility device, I like to show multiple uses of it. So I just got a whole bunch of different magicians together and showed all these different uses of this trick and how different presentations you could do with it. And so I spent way more time and effort on it than was probably necessary, but I wanted to because it's me. Yeah. Anything was the saying, anything worth doing is worth overdoing, So
yeah, definitely. I think that versatility is very important, as we were saying, with people creative that will go, oh, that's not my style, but then they might see someone in the trailer who is a bit more them and go, oh yes, I can now figure out how to do the trick. And
I have found that not just magicians, but people in general, they can't think past what they see. And so you have to, and there are a lot of, as performers and magicians, we're so used to just having to problem solve and, be creative and be like, oh, what if we did this? What if you did this? And 90% of magic is hobbyists who can't do that because they're human. And so you have to kind of show them the options when you don't realize that you have to. And it took me a while to figure that out. I've realized just how many people have no vision of anything.
Yeah.
So
it can definitely restrict some tricks that you see out there when there's massive creativity. Even something simple like changing if something has a box that it comes with, but the box isn't critical to us, you can change the box to
yeah, no, absolutely. Well, there's a trick that came out, CWs Magic put out, called Rainbow, and it's and I saw it and I went, oh, this thing should go in my wallet, and I should do it as a card to wallet trick. And then I started doing it, and everybody else was like, that's a great, and now everybody does it that way. Even including the guy inventor who was like, is this your thing? And I went, yes. And he's like, can we do something with it? Yes, fine. So it's one of those things where it's like once somebody has a good idea, everybody else wants it, but it isn't until somebody else does it usually. So and that's why, I mean, magic is so full of like, copycats, and it's very inbred and incestuous, where it's just like we just see the same thing, do the same thing everybody else is doing because we know that works for them, and it's like, yeah, but you're not them.
Yeah, I think that should just be the caption. You're not them.
Right. Yeah.
So you were saying that you were from Texas, but you now live in Las Vegas. When did you decide to move, and what was like the inspiration for an appetite for Vegas?
So I've been out here 12 years now, and it was just because I basically gotten all I could out of where I was. And the southern United States isn't terribly progressive in their thinking. But also like all the venues, all the venues I had worked where I had gone away, all the opportunities that I'd had were kind of exhausted, and I'm like, I need to go somewhere where there's stages, because I'm a stage performer, and people take stage magic and stage performing seriously, and I just need to get the hell out of town. I need to go somewhere else, and I was like, I'll go where there's no magicians.
Less competition. Straight to Vegas.
Well, right. Well, I also didn't come out here like a lot of people. So here's the interesting thing about Vegas. For anybody who is thinking about moving out here, Vegas is a great place to continue a career, not a place to start a career. You have to come out here with material. You have to come out here with some form of, background. You can't come out here and start from scratch. This is not the place to do that. This is a place where, there's so much competition that, it takes 10 years to kind of find your material, and so you'll be and this is not the place to find your material. This is the place to come out and evolve your material. Even like I changed a handful of routines and things when I came out here, because I'm like, oh, the stuff that worked in Texas isn't going to work out here. Okay, cool, let's change that. And I was very lucky when I first came out here, but I came out here not to have my own show. I wasn't out here trying. It's like they say, how do you make $10,000 in Vegas with having a magic show? You start with $20,000. So it's like this is if you come out here you're trying to stroke your ego and have a show, you're going to lose your ass half the time, and then you'll be a half-assed magician. But I just came out here to work. That's it. I just wanted to work. I just wanted to perform. And if you just want to be around magic, there's a lot of it here. So, it just depends on your reasoning. And my reason was just to go somewhere where it was taken seriously and perform more. But since I've been out here, my focus has shifted a bit, just because I also do prop building as well and consulting. So it turned out there was a void in a market for that I was unaware of. So that eats up a lot. Not eats up. That's kind of half of my business now, and I also have a side hustle creating, building, and making escape rooms. So I also do that as well. So I don't perform as much as I used to. Well, nobody is right now, obviously. But even before that, my job now is making other people look good, apparently.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's.
Have you considered doing some more like virtual stuff? A lot of magicians have gone down the virtual show route now and stuff like that. Have you considered that?
No, that's not for me. And again, it's like if I was sitting here, if I had no other options, maybe. But I have so many avenues. I know how to do a little. I know a lot about. I'll do a little bit of a lot of things. So I have a lot of different avenues and ways of making money and keeping myself creative. So. Because when this first hit, I was sitting there going, man, right before all this happened, I was like, man, I really need to take 3 months off for personal projects for myself. And then somebody said, okay, here's your 3 months, and I was like, that was a little extreme.
It's your fault.
Good job. Yeah. So I got a lot of personal projects done in the first 3 months, and then people started wanting things again. As things started to even out a bit, people are like, hey, we need stuff. Like, all right. So now I'm back to doing that.
How did you find the whole consulting for the performers? Did you find a challenge at the beginning to try and get into their character or what type of stuff they perform, or was it just a chance to be more creative?
I've been doing it so long for my friends. Like I have a lot of performer friends who we would just sit around and brainstorm and come up with ideas and help them with this, that, or the other. So it wasn't one of those things where I'm like, I have no experience in this, I'm going to do it. It was like, I've been doing this for friends forever. I bet there are people who aren't my friends who have money, maybe. Turns out no, but the magicians are cheap asses. And but yeah, so it's but yeah, the there's definitely there are people who are more difficult to work with than others, for sure. And you kind of learn to be diplomatic with those people and how to kind of navigate that here and there. And thankfully, they weren't my first client out of the gate. So but it's there, and there's people who will treat you differently because they're paying you money as opposed to just like giving them advice. It's very interesting. When I was doing Wizard Wars, there were people who I knew in the business who I'd had ideas for and tried to offer advice, and they kind of blew me off. But when I'm there, when I'm their official guy getting paid to do it, they listen to me, and I'm like, nothing has changed, you jerks.
What I find helpful, because I do some consulting with Steve when he has a TV appearance or something like that. I try up with stuff, but it's always the advantage of if I have an idea, but like for a stage piece that I couldn't do because it's not mentalism, I'm like, oh, I can still develop this and just.
There's definitely stuff that I have actually come up with for the performer, and they either didn't do it or we couldn't do it. And I'm like, this is a good idea, I'm going to do it. Like I've gone the opposite way with that. But I mean, for me, that's also why I have my talking act. I'll have an idea like, oh, this won't fit here, but it'll fit over here. But yeah, there's definitely things I've created that I have a mental Rolodex of just weird ideas. I have like notes all over the place on different electronic devices. I have notebooks. I have all these scribbles everywhere of just random stuff that if it ever comes up, I go, oh, hey, I had this thing. And I have the philosophy of it, like if I go to a TV show and I pitch you an idea in a writing session that never ends up on camera, it's still mine and I can do what I want with it. And I'm like, oh, hey, another performer could use this, or so it's and sometimes there's things that you don't think much of that other people, you find out, like you just show it to somebody, they go, that's amazing. I go, it is. All right.
Doing some TV stuff then, and people kind of getting to know your face from being on TV and stuff like that. Do you regularly like bring some magic with you, or do you always have something that you can perform? Or
I mean, ever since I was in high school, I always carried a deck of cards and a thumb tip with me. I mean, it's just my go-to because you can do so much with that. But I also know how to do magic with stuff just laying around on a table. Like I can do 10 minutes with a dinner table, no problem. So classic improv magic kind of stuff. So. I mean, as I've said for a long time, I love magic. I'm not necessarily keen on a lot of the people I work with, but I love I love magic quite a bit, and I always will, even no matter how much. I mean, you can never pull the magic out of a magician, no matter how long they step away from it.
I think it's complete. Like it's an obsession for me to the point that I do French drops with popcorn in the cinema when nobody's watching.
Yeah, my friend used to call that magician hell. He's like, you palm everything you touch.
Yeah. Anytime I get change in a shop, it goes into classic palm.
I'm waiting. I'm sitting in line with my credit card, waiting to pay for something, and it's 10 Kai all day. I'm just sitting there, just doing like this stuff with it for like, and spinning it, and I'm just fiddling with this thing until I pay for something.
It's actually helpful because other people have to hold the coins, but I can palm it and hold other things, and I don't I save on so much plastic bags.
It can be handy at times. I play the guitar. Sometimes if I'm strumming, I'll palm the pick, and then I'll keep looking.
All right. And then, you play guitar differently than I do, apparently.
Yeah, it's an upright guitar, I think, based on.
I was saying this.
So we have a segment on the show which we call The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, where we basically ask someone to tell us the story.
I'll be the ugly one.
We'll do it based on, it's about a performance which started off good, went bad, ended up ugly. Basically, some sort of disaster that happened. We've had some interesting stories so far, so it'd be interesting to see.
So this isn't necessarily a performance thing. It's more of a series of performance things. Back in 2007, so I also have a foot in the sideshow business, right? I've done sideshow as well as magic. I lean towards magic more, but I've done a lot in the sideshow business, including traveling with like a 10-in-1, like an actual sideshow carny tents and setting up stuff, hammering stakes in the ground. It was terrible, but it was great at the same time. Anyway, so I have a lot of friends in that business, and we were all going up to this convention called the Sideshow Gathering in Pennsylvania, which is up on the east, New England area, my friends had modified a school bus to be a tour bus, right? And we were hitting a few stops along the way. We were starting in Texas and going up, and I think we stopped in Arkansas, Ohio, and somewhere else. I forget the other place. And by the end of it, we ended up kind of naming it the Death Trap 2007 tour, because this bus tried to kill us on multiple occasions. So like a number of times the brake line just snapped. That was fun. We had to fix that a few times. We had a flat tire. We had the bus the inside caught fire one time and ruined my blanket. That was good. And this is all stuff that happened between the stops, right? Yeah. And so it was killing our cash. When we got to the Sideshow Gathering, they actually took up a collection for us so we could get back home. But I mean, so it's like the good part was getting to perform, was going to these venues and getting to perform and see friends and all this stuff and do things. The bad part would be being on a bus that's trying to kill you. And then the ugliest part of this for me was I was driving. So here's a fun fact about me: I did not have a driver's license until I was 29. Because I could not afford a car. So why bother get a license if I can't have a car? Now, I could drive. I knew how to drive. I just didn't have the thing that legally says I could. So they were like, you should drive. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. Everybody else is too tired. Fine. So I'm driving. And then the gas pedal gets stuck down, like just jammed down. And it's like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. Nobody knows what to do. So we kill the power. The guy's like, just turn the car off or turn the bus off. And remember, this is like a school bus, like a 30-foot long thing that I'm driving. And we're like, okay, we're just gonna coast off the highway and into a parking lot somewhere. Well, we're getting off the exit ramp, and we're coming up to basically a light, and it starts to turn red, and we have to turn at like a 90-degree angle. I'm like, if I stop here, we're screwed. Okay, I'm running the red light, and we're all just like, hold on for dear life as I turn this corner, and this bus going like way faster than it should be around a corner. So we almost died a few times. So that's probably the most like chaotic experience I've ever had, just being in a vehicle that was trying to kill us and trying to perform at the same time.
That's like a complete daredevil like experience. You should have stunt driver should now be like your new career on the CV, ready to go.
Well, I mean, the fact that I didn't make the bus just completely go onto its side is a testament to my, I don't know what, insanity. I don't know what happened. It was, and yeah, like there's a few of us who like never speak of this incident again. And the funny thing is, this is not my first time on a modified school bus as a tour bus that did something horrible. This is the second one, actually. But it's so for those of you watching, don't do that. Get a real bus, get a real touring vehicle. Don't modify school bus.
That's in your rider now. No tour bus cannot be modified school bus. Can't appear to show.
Yeah. One of my favorite aspects, so they built like bunk beds in there. So you had like beds, but then they had one suspended on chains, right? So whenever this thing would take a corner too hard, the thing would just go wham into the frame and wake everybody up. Be like, huh? Oh God, okay, it's just the bus.
Motion sickness, I'd say, would be a slight problem with that.
See, that I'm okay with that. I actually like sleeping in. Like I suffer from what my friend calls carcolepsy. Like the movement makes me sleep. So I've slept on all sorts of vehicles. Not while driving, but I've definitely, like, I don't mind the movement. Like a cruise ship is great because you're just like, hey, this is being rocked to sleep. This is kind of nice.
Brilliant.
We were asking people beforehand when we knew you were coming on if they had any questions. It's something that somebody asked, I can't remember the name, but they were saying, where did the name Bizzaro come from originally?
All right, so I was 13. My parents and I were in Austin, Texas, and they were there for a toy collectible show because they used to sell like toys and collectibles. And I was already into magic at the time. And so I was practicing something in front of a mirror. I want to say, and I could be wrong about this. This is detail I'm not 100% on, because like I know the tricks I owned at the time. I was doing like a linking ropes, like the colored linking ropes trick, which is the best linking ropes. Like they sell linking rope tricks that are just all white rope, and I'm like, that is nowhere. Like the colored ones are so much better. You could do so much more with them. Anyway. And so I was doing something in a mirror, and I remember, and what happened was I looked at it and went, oh, that's Bizzaro. And then it was like this light bulb, Boogie Nights, Dirk Diggler moment went off over my head, and I went, ooh, that's a great name. And I had no idea that there was a Superman villain at the time named that. That was not known to me at the time. And I remember just going and writing it down. I immediately stopped what I was doing and wrote it down and kind of drew it out. And then at some point, I think, because I'd always spelled it with 2 Z's and 1 R, and then I think somewhere along the lines I'd realized that that's not correct. So I wrote it out both ways, and I was like, I like ZZ Top, and I like their little cross Z logo, so I'm going to go with the 2 Z's thing.
Yeah.
Much better. And also it separates me from all the other Bizzaro named things that are out there, which was not intentional. It just helps. So yeah, it was just kind of my brain just going, ding.
It's great when a moment like that happens. It's pure clarity.
You were saying you don't have a character per se, that it's more of an extension of yourself, but that style, is that something that you've seen in Vegas being kind of copied since you kind of came on the scene?
Nobody's stupid enough to do that. No, I mean it's a nice. Rudy Kobe has some notes he put out back in like '99 where he talks about, it's like they can steal your material, but they can never steal your character. And so it's like, if you have a strong character that's very unique to yourself, it's very hard for them to sort of, for thieves to take that. And also at the same time, I think it's so unique to me that nobody else could wrap their head around it. Like there's definitely emulation. People who have seen some of the stuff I do and have not copied what I do, but some of my mannerisms I've noticed here and there. But I mean, they're not my competition. Yeah. And they're definitely, we don't work the same markets.
You haven't had a situation of like a Ukrainian Piff the Magic Dragon or anything.
Well, I've also never been on that big a television show. So it's like maybe if I had been on more TV, then maybe somebody would have been like, oh, this guy brings a bag of Lay's potato chips to life. It's a different trick because it's a red deck of cards, not a blue deck of cards.
Completely original.
They were saying that he wanted to change his name to Bizzaro, and he was just wondering would that.
I was so close, but I can't find. I have a really big head, so hats don't really fit on me, and I just threw it all.
I have to have these custom made. I get it. Yeah. I got a large noggin myself.
Literally, I've tried putting on hats before, and it's just like they come to here, and that's about it. So it's like,
right. Well, I mean, it's a great comedy character if you ever need to go that route. It's like,
yeah. I need to develop an expanding hat trick, and that will be the whole, and I'll do it silently and call myself Bizzaro.
Yeah. And it wasn't Gazebo. Call yourself Gazebo. That's we did a show here. So there was like I do stuff in the burlesque world as well. So there was like a local burlesque show, and they did the theme of like comic book heroes and villains or something like that. And so I had a friend of mine come out as Bizzaro. So he came out with a big B on his chest, and he's like, I'm Bizzaro Man. And then I came out like, get the hell out of here. So I had this is totally random. I had this a friend of mine. They were doing a gender bent of a burlesque show, and my friend wanted me to perform in it, but I couldn't. So I taught a female friend of mine to do one of my acts. So I had her doing my SpongeBall's from Mouth act. but because it was also kind of burlesque, what ended up happening was at the end she just opens her trench coat and she's got sponge balls over her boot, like on those pasties over her nipples. It was really fun.
I do think the magic can work quite well in the burlesque shows. I know there's a few people in Ireland who do it. I've done it. Steve's done it, and I think they would kind of complement each other well in a strange way.
Well, it used to be that way. Burlesque didn't mean, out of shape girls taking clothes off. It used to mean like, performing variety and stuff like that.
The vaudeville, whole era had that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think burlesque actually kind of don't quote me on this because it's been a while since I've looked into this, but I think the concept of burlesque predates vaudeville and it kind of leads into vaudeville a bit as well. So, but they definitely go hand in hand. That's definitely very much the thing. So it's not uncommon to see a variety act, and there's people who specialize in variety acts for burlesque, and they're very good.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think as you're saying, you've performed with a few stand-up comedians around the comedy circle with the act. Do you find the comedy magic difficult? Because I've heard it said, we've discussed it before, that like comedy magic isn't magic or funny.
Well, the problem is most magicians aren't comedians.
Yeah.
They think that like there's a difference between writing comedy and writing gags. A lot of magicians think any laugh makes you funny. And it's like and there's also, they don't know the difference between a good laugh and a bad laugh as well. And a lot of comedians don't either, quite frankly. But there's definitely a difference between like, what's a good example of this? It's like so people think like the baby gag, where it's like so and so is a baby, is comedy. And it's like, no, it's called the baby gag for a reason. It's a gag. It's not. It's not comedy. It's a joke ish. So it's. I mean, there's a comedian. His name, I want to say Neil Brennan. I want to say that was his name. Let me double check that real quick, so I get this right. Neil Brennan, is that his name? Yeah, Neil Brennan. So he did this stand-up special called Three Mics. Did you see this? You know what I'm talking about?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so he had three mics. He was a writer for Dave Chappelle forever, right? And he finally said, "I want to do my own thing." So his special has three microphones on stage. And the premise was, this microphone is for stand-up, like pure stand-up. This one is for gags and jokes. And this one is basically like therapy mic, as I called it, where it's like the deep introspective. It's like finding the comedy in the tragedy, basically. And so he'd do 20 minutes in front of each one, straight stand-up. Then he'd be, jokey, gaggy, and then he would one-liners, stuff like that, and then he would be deep and dark. And it shows you the real difference in the different styles of comedy that you can do where they're out there. And magicians tend to be in the middle mic, the gags and the jokes and the one-liners and stuff. So, and so it's like I hung out with a troupe here in town called Short Bus Comics, which was a great name for them. It was a very experimental comedy troupe. It was where all the misfits in town came to perform, and so I got to see some weird shit, and it was great. I really enjoyed it. But it helped me learn a lot too, just watching and also emceeing and hosting it sometimes and performing and everything like that. So, but it's interesting to see the varying levels of comedy. But yes, most magicians are not funny, and so the guys who do good comedy magic just call themselves comedians. They don't say magicians. Also, because if you say magician, a lot of comedy clubs are like, it's like no. So you just say comedian, they're like, oh, okay, and then you go out and you're actually funny. They're very forgiving of the fact that you're a prop comic.
Yeah. I think prop comic is like a good way to like because that's kind of where you are in there. Have you tried doing it without any magic, just pure stand-up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of it. I can be funny without the props, and I dabbled in it with open mics. It just brings me no joy. I mean, like in my show, like I know myself and a few others, they like a good example of this is. Jeff Dunham. Jeff Dunham comes out and does 10 minutes without the puppets to prove he can be funny without them. And there's a few magicians who have written like 5 minutes of stand-up without the stuff just to open their show and prove that they can. I don't have 5 minutes of material. I have a few, like I have 2 minutes of jokes that I can do at the start of my show, or I sprinkle throughout my show here and there, just because, you know, there's some things that are just funny without a prop. And so so there's something to be said for that, but just pure stand up is not my bag. It doesn't do much for me.
Yeah, I tried it in the local comedy club, just at like 2 to 5 minutes type, to see if I could do it, as like leave the crutch behind and like.
It's a great challenge. It's a great exercise. It's just like walking, like we talked about earlier, walking into a store and buying a bunch of rando stuff. See if you can make magic with it. You know, try to be funny without it, and see what I'll tell you. Something that when I started working with the comedy troupe, one thing that I kind of did for myself was I basically eliminated every trick that involved pulling somebody on stage, because I wanted to be able to carry a show by myself for at least 30 minutes. I wanted 30 minutes of material of me by myself doing magic and comedy on stage without having to rely on somebody else to help me be funny. And I wanted more of a comedy club feel to my stand-up show, as opposed to a birthday party magician, you know. And that's not saying, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense for people who do it. It's just I wanted something that it just forced me to focus on me and my writing at that point. So that was a good exercise for me. And then once I had that 30 minutes, I was able to bring the stuff back in as well. So.
Yeah, I think those exercises are really important, because you can kind of flex between it and be able to move up. And then depending on the requirements, sometimes you can't get people on stage, and suddenly you have a 30-minute act that you can do.
Yeah, well, and right now, COVID. Yeah, I've got 30 minutes I can do without touching anybody, so it's nice. Unless it's myself. And so, but no, one of the things I talk about in my lectures is one of the biggest creativity tips I give people is just put restrictions on yourself. You know, having a restriction put on yourself, either by you or an outside force, is a great way to be creative, because you have to figure out a way around that problem.
Yeah, because I think it's similar to what we were saying earlier about either picking your powers or picking what powers you don't have. That's a restriction you immediately put on yourself to restrict down what you have. So we're just coming up in the hour. So before we go, I think we'd be remiss not to mention Halloween, being as this was the Halloween special, which were masks at the beginning, Halloween talk at the end, and I think that kind of covers everything. And
perfect.
Keeps it on brand. So you were saying that Halloween was something that you were really interested in growing up and things like that. Is it always been the massive part of your life?
Well, I mean, if I could show you my house. My wife and our house looks like a Halloween store and a craft store threw up on each other. You know, it's like I mean, you know, I've got this stuff behind me. I've got that stuff right there. I mean, and this is not. Somebody saw this the other day and was like, "Oh, that you've decorated your office for the season." I go, "Yes, the season."
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, like there's another act I work with. His name is the Shocker. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him or not.
Yeah.
He's like for those of you who don't know him, he's like a wrestling magician character, and he's like a talking act, and I'm a silent act. So we do a show together. I have the poster here. Let me see if I can bring it up. It is that one right there. We had this like cool poster made. We wanted to look like an old horror movie magazine cover and stuff. So, because we're super into Halloween, we're weirdos and love costumes and things like that. And so, you know, our show can be ramped up to very like Halloween bloody, or we can do it off season, depending on who wants to hire us. And we worked at the Magic Castle a number of times for Halloween doing our show and stuff. So it's very much it's always in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
And also, you know, having weird stuff around you helps you create with things that you like. So
definitely. And did you have like a go-to Halloween trick that you like doing, maybe close up if you're just hanging out with friends, or is it more stage?
I mean, one of my favorite tricks is the razor blade trick, with the razor blades and the thread. So I mean, that's very Halloween. I mean, my life is Halloween, so and all my friends know that. So it's like nobody gets freaked out if I. You know, it's like the closest thing I can do is sideshow stuff, like hammering a nail into my face or putting something in, you know, my eye or whatever. Then people are like, "Oh, Jesus!" Even my friends, some of them can't handle that. So it's like, all right, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, my go-to. I mean, this one of my go-to tricks since I was very young and I saw Amazing Jonathan do it has always been the that thing right there, and that freaks people out. I've had people run from the room screaming just that alone, and I'm like, I love it.
It gives that shock.
You'll have to come to Ireland at some stage for Halloween, Bizzaro.
Oh yeah, I'd love it. Let's find somebody to book me. We'll do a show. It'll be amazing.
Because do you find being in Vegas, because like for us Halloween is real autumn and dark, early, raining, do you find the sunniness of Vegas kind of interferes with Halloween a little bit?
It's a different kind of Halloween. It's the scary desolation of the desert Halloween.
Yeah, that's true.
No, I mean it's there's nothing. I mean, obviously, I grew up, growing up where I know what seasons are like. Thankfully, I didn't grow up in Vegas. Like, there's a few people I know who are from Vegas, and they've never seen snow or leaves change color or stuff like that. So there is definitely something to be said for not having that when you're used to it. But I mean, last year for the first time ever, because normally on Halloween we're not at home. So for Halloween, it was in the middle of the week last year or something like that, weird like that. I wasn't booked, and so my wife and I are like, you know what? Let's decorate the front yard on the 30th. Like, we decided the day before Halloween to decorate our yard, and using like 3/4 of it was just stuff we had in the house. So like the other quarter was us running to the dollar store and buying a bunch of cheap crap. But also I have a lot of lighting and stuff, so I made it look really cool with like spooky lighting, and you lighting your house right, lighting anything right really adds to it. So the neighbors came out the next day and were like, this wasn't here yesterday. When did you guys do this? It feels like this has been here all month, but it wasn't here yesterday. And we're like, magic.
Did the fucking Adams family just move in or something?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to do it this year because trick or treating is kind of dead. So we're like, it's not really worth it, and we're going to go to a party anyway. So
we had in my house growing up. Me and my dad were very big with Halloween, and it started off with us dressing up in one of those like Dementor faceless masks, standing as a statue in the porch waiting for kids to come up and enjoy. Then a few years later, I did a headless thing and had a stuffed mask beside me and lay in the garden, and kids would kick me, stand on me, wouldn't move. They'd go to the door, turn around, and I'd be standing there holding the head. And the next morning, we came out and there was just like stuff all over. The baskets went flying, sweets everywhere. We got them all back, which was great. And then we took it slightly too far one day where my dad stuffed a boiler suit, put a mask and a noose around it and hung it outside our door. And crashed when she saw it. So then, and he also answered the door to a child wearing a Santa costume and a skull mask, and the kid cried, and we were like, that was funny. The line. We know what that is.
See, I think that's funny as hell, personally.
When the neighbors start complaining, you go, okay.
No, then you're doing a good job. What do you mean? Come on.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't had a chance to do any of that stuff because I used to work in haunted houses. I miss scaring people. That was so much fun. But when you work professionally, you have to give up a few things, unfortunately. So
it's a busy night for many performers when Halloween comes around because we tend to stand out
a bit.
So I just like to take this opportunity to thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. And if you have anything to promote, we can promote it now, or anything that you'd like.
I mean, if anybody wants to see what I do, you can go to my website, Bizzaro.ninja, because why not? If you need like props, bills, or consulting, I have Bizzaro by Design is that website. And if for some reason you're looking for escape rooms or escape room props or people to create you an escape room, you can go to testsubjects.com as well. So
perfect. Definitely recommend checking all that out. And again, thank you so much, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day in sunny Las Vegas. And we will talk to everybody again. We're off next weekend, so we'll talk to them again later.
Good. Goodbye. Goodbye, everybody. It's very nice.
Happy Halloween, man. Have a good time.
Happy Halloween.